Welcome to a new episode of Superpowered Fancast. I'm Darren. Getting back into this creator series of interviews, I was pleased to speak with writer and artist Derek Kirk Kim. Derek Kirk Kim is the Eisner Award-winning writer and artist behind the Image comic series The Last Mermaid, a story about a lone mermaid wandering an endless wasteland trying to survive its harsh conditions in a mechanized suit. It is a unique and engaging story about survival and discovery that creates some interesting mysteries that I'm excited to explore. Now, the first two issues are available now, and I definitely recommend checking it out and letting me know what you think. So check out my interview with Derek Kirk Kim and leave a comment below. Go. Welcome to an episode of Superpowered Fancast. This is Darren. I want to first of all say I'm excited to talk to Derek Kirk Kim. If you've been reading the website, if you've been seeing my reviews about The Last Mermaid, which is his series from Image, you know that I love this series conceptually and the story, and I've been excited to talk to Mr. Kim, and I'm just going to dive right in. So, my first question is, and I kind of want to.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for having me.
Oh, no, thank you. I'm sorry. I mean, thank you for being on. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Like, before I dive into all the fanboy questions about Last Mermaid, I just want to start by asking you, like, what your and you don't have to tell the whole story, but what was kind of like your journey to comics? Like, where did that begin?
Oh man, I lived in Korea till I was 8 years old, and in Korea, comics are just like any other form of reading, just like text or whatever, prose. So unlike a lot of American kids of my age that grew up in the '90s or '80s and '90s, we were kind of made fun of for reading comics here in America, but in Korea it wasn't like that at all. It was just a normal part of reading. And the first real way I got into comics in Korea was in Korea we had Korean reading room. We had comics reading rooms. So instead of going to a store and buying the comic, you go there and you like rent time. So like you go there, you pay like a quarter, and then like for an hour you can just read any comic they have like on the shelves. It's incredible, man. So back then in Korea, like that's how I read my comics. I would just go to these comics rental rooms, and I think they do let you rent them out too. I think that was another way, but I don't know if that was more money or a different kind of place. I can't remember. It's so foggy now because I was such a little kid. But I definitely remember like paying to read comics there, and then just sitting there, and you could buy like chips and stuff, and read your comics. And so I went through like volumes and volumes of comics that I can't remember now because I was in Korea and I was a little kid. And unlike comics you grow up with here, they're kind of always in your life. They're kind of in your presence. So even if you were a little kid, you still recall them because you still see them around, and there's constant reminders of them. But because I moved and I immigrated and kind of had a separation from that time in my life, it's hard for me to like even remember what the comics were. But I do have vivid memories of the cartoons I watched, which were Astro Boy, Kimba the White Lion, Gundam. Gundam was huge when I was a kid. Oh, and Mazinger Z. That was like the biggest one when I was a kid. I don't know if you ever seen that cartoon.
No, like a lot of those shows, because I'm originally from Chicago, but I grew up in LA. And
okay, cool.
I didn't see a lot of those shows until I moved to California, and then we got cable, and then I would see things like Astro Boy and Manzinger Z and Robotech, like Macross Saga, all of those things. So
sweet.
I remember a lot of those things when especially when I was a kid, like around 8, 9 years old, is when I started getting.
Nice. Yeah, that's around my age too. I think we're like the same age. We're
around the same age.
Yeah. And in America it was called Trenzor Z. I remember.
Exactly.
And I was like, "What is this Trenzor Z?"
Because I never understood what the difference between Mansinger and Trenzor was, because I was a kid and I never bothered to ask.
It's so funny because I kind of imagine they changed Mazinger because it sounds weird, but then you changed it to something equally as weird.
Right, exactly.
That's so why even bother?
It's why I can never understand why. Like, it was I can't remember what it was originally, but it was here was either Battle of the Planets or G-Force.
That's right.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I loved it, but I was like, I knew it wasn't until I got older when I realized, oh, like the guy that they're talking to, like they just added that in. Like he's not in the original at all. And I guess
Right,
that's the
right.
appeal to American audiences.
Yeah, it's crazy how they like a Power. I mean, Power Rangers was like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, they just took the footage of the Power Rangers and the actual people they replaced with all the American actors.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, it's interesting to, especially when you talk about comics when you were a kid, because I really didn't have that, but it was I had a spot, like there was a store that
Mhm.
I used to go to with my friends when I was a kid, and you'd go to the spinner rack and you'd buy your comics, and we'd all just stand around. We'd always kind of look like we were doing something like shady, but we were standing there like reading comics. But it's interesting hearing your journey in that regard, because it's because of how it seems like in Korea, like comics were treated like any other form of literature.
Yeah,
Like it
that's
wasn't
right.
something that you had to, that had, well, I mean, not necessarily even then in the 80s, didn't have like a big kind of like paint to it like it did in like like in the Hays Code case and all that. But
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, but it was still a kind of well, you were reading comics, you weren't necessarily reading.
Actually, that's true. When I first came to America when I was 8, I actually just kind of looked through the pictures. I didn't even really
Yeah,
read because obviously my English was so limited at the time. But also, you can just kind of understand the story intuitively, I think, just by looking at the pictures.
right.
So I remember when I first immigrated, the first comic I found was Spider-Man, and yeah, I just looked at the pictures. I don't think I read them for the first like couple years, but yeah, but the it was the Romita Spider-Mans. That was the first Spider-Mans that I found, which was
Mhm.
before my time. But they added these like digest collections that had like
Mhm.
3 issues, I think, collected into these like Archie size ones. Those are the first ones I found,
Yeah, I think
and
I know what you're talking about.
yeah, so I used to be obsessed with those, read them over and over, and it was that entire like the Kingpin storyline
Mhm.
when he first appears when Romito was drawing him, and so even though Ditko came up with all the Spider-Man stuff originally, like to my mind, it's all the Romita characters that are like this quintessential
Yeah.
Spider-Man, yeah, designs.
Well, yeah, I remember those a lot. But and especially again hearing about your comic book journey. Um, I know you uh just learning more about you transitioned to animation filmmaking. And
Mm-hmm.
what was that transition like? Was it something where did you was it a question of you wanted to do comics, but you wanted to do animation as well, or was it some like just kind of how did that balance out both comics and animation?
It's kind of funny. I first got into live action filmmaking first from comics, and it was a weird reason, which was well, actually, I always kind of wanted to do film as well as comics. But I remember in college, I took some film classes, and I just found the technical stuff so daunting
Yeah,
and so difficult to wrap my brain around. And at that time, we didn't have digital cameras, so it was all film.
yeah,
And back then with film, it's so expensive to even try filmmaking because the film costs so much money, and if you make a mistake, like you got the
right,
focus wrong, it's like that's gone. Yeah, that money's gone. Like so. So I remember, and I wasn't very good that first time I took photography, but looking back, I think it was just I just had a bad camera. Like I was using my dad's old DSLR camera or SLR camera,
yeah,
and yeah, and I think the lenses were foggy or something. So I don't think it was really my fault. But at the time, I didn't really realize that.
yeah.
So I kind of gave up on it pretty quick, and then so I did always wanted to try it, but I just couldn't get over that technical hurdle. And then the digital era came in when the DSLRs came in, right?
Mhm.
And then literally anybody could pick up a camera and shoot very cinematic looking footage without having to go to the film canisters and go to
Yeah.
the film development and all that stuff and guess the focus, just by measuring and all that crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so then that also coincided with the time when Avatar: The Last Airbender, the first live action film was being made, the M. Night Shyamalan one.
Yeah.
And it's still weird that this is all related, but I remember when that was announced and all the casting were like almost all of them are non-Asian. And
Yeah.
it was really upsetting as a huge fan of the show and as somebody that was
Oh no,
so
I agree.
excited
I
to
was there
see.
the whole time. Yeah.
yeah, excited to see Asian faces in a mythic, Star Wars like, epic like that. It was really exciting as an Asian American. So I was really disappointed that they were changing the casting. So I started up like a petition with a lot of my artist friends, and
Mhm.
I got a bunch of signatures, like a couple hundred signatures from artists like Jin and Yang, even one of the directors on the animated show.
Yeah.
And I sent the petition just to politely. We weren't aggressive about it, just
Yeah.
politely asking if they would reconsider the casting and why. And we thought that was important. Which in hindsight, it's really funny because today it wouldn't even be a question. I don't think they would
Right.
even attempt to do that. But at the time, like what we were proposing was like crazy, to accurately cast them.
Well,
And
the strangest thing is that that's still a kind of an argument that's still kind of had a little bit.
that's
I
true.
mean, it's
That's
one of those
true.
things where you have people advocating for for that. I mean, the fact that you have to have people advocating for that is
Exactly.
so it hasn't really,
Yeah.
it hasn't moved too much, but it is moving in the right direction.
Definitely. Definitely. And so we did the petition, and the it didn't go through. They didn't listen to us or any of the other petitions that were going on at the time from fans and stuff.
Mhm.
So after that happened, and I was really disappointed. I thought, you know what, I should just make films myself. Then we wouldn't have this issue. Like we need more people of color actually making things. So that that is so it starts at the top, and you're not trying to fight like a big system to get them to change it. You just try to start at the top. So that's why initially I actually was like got into live action filmmaking. I was like, maybe I should just try it. Maybe I
Right.
should try it. What's the harm? So then I went to LACC, which is Los Angeles City College, and they
Mhm.
have a really great film program there. So I just took the classes and made student films, and it was really fun. And then and then and then I made a web series, and I was doing a comic called Toon that kind of tied in with the web series,
Mhm.
and neither project took off. So I was kind of in this. I was kind of basically I was broke. You know what I mean? Like my
Yeah.
comics weren't selling, the film stuff wasn't taking off. So then that's when I looked into animation.
Mhm.
So that's how I got into animation. But then all the stuff I learned, the filmmaking classes, I could apply that to all the animation stuff.
Right.
So yeah, because I already had a handle on storyboarding and which editing and all that stuff,
Mhm.
it was a very easy transition to go into to animation. So that's how I kind of rolled weirdly, accidentally, kind of into animation. And then once I got into animation, I really ended up loving working in that form as well.
Right.
And started out in character design, then went to storyboards, and finally went to directing at Disney on Amphibia.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I was going to say, and just like I mean, before again, I'm not jumping into it just yet, but I absolutely can see, um, especially in the Last Mermaid, like so many of the sequences. In fact, so much of the story is so visually cinematic. Like I
Hmm.
can almost see it as like shots in a movie. Like even like the one I have behind me is something that I can see kind of, something like panning back and just
Right, right,
kind of scope of what you see. Like you kind of just kind of start you like start on the pod thing and just kind of back out and then just
right.
how emotional and evocative that can be. So absolutely understand. And as I have a young son, so he's, anything Disney Channel or animation related, he's kind of into. So he has
Oh,
actually
cool.
seen Amphibia, and
Oh, really?
he
Oh,
actually really
wow, that's
enjoyed
so
it.
cool.
But
That's
yeah,
so cool.
and that was one of the things that again kind of led me to reaching out to you, was because I had talked to him about that, and I was reading The Last Mermaid, and your name clicked in my mind, and I realized that
Oh.
this name this sounds familiar, and then I talked to my son, he was reading, and then but then I was like, yeah, okay, that's it, but there's something else, and there's something else, and I realized that because I'm a huge kind of like fantasy nerd, and one of the
Oh,
things,
cool.
yeah,
Me
and one
too.
of the things I remember was because I collected the entire series of Bill Willingham's Fables, and
Oh,
I
okay.
remember
Awesome. Yeah, yeah.
that you
Oh, yeah.
drew one of like one of my favorite kind of little interludes in
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah, in A
wow.
Thousand One Nights of Snowfall. And I remembered I was like, oh, okay, now like everything's kind of coming together. And that's one of the reasons, okay, now I have to I have to reach
Oh, wow.
and
Oh,
talk
wow.
to
That's
them.
so cool. I'm so glad you people still remember that.
Well, yeah, like I said, maybe it's just because I'm a nerd, but I love that thing because I love the storytelling, but I also love the visual style as well. But that's also kind of leads me into asking you, so was it something when you were doing animation that you decided because of your love of comics that you wanted to try drawing them as well, or did you reach out to somebody? Did somebody reach out to you and say, "Hey, you should try doing a comic," or because I know you had done like your the ones you're doing on things you're doing on your site and things like that. Like, so just kind of how did that transition to comics kind of help kind of happen? Like, it's not the full story, but just kind of like one of the things that are memorable to you about kind of transitioning to that medium that you had grown up with.
Okay, so oh, one second. Let me just turn on this light real
Uh,
quick. It's
yeah,
getting
yeah,
pretty
absolutely.
dark in this room. But yeah, so actually I never ever even thought about going into any kind of TV or film related thing in the beginning. I
Mhm.
was always comics were always my first love, and for the longest time, that's all I wanted to do. Before those the two projects that I told you about that didn't take off. Before that, I didn't really have any idea of doing anything else for a living other than comics.
Mhm.
So coming back to comics, I mean, it just feels like coming home, really. And I know I've said that before, but it's just it's like yeah, it's like when the hobbits come back to
The Cubs
Hobbiton at
come
the
back
end,
after the
and you have that warm feeling
right.
around the table.
They're just kind of rolling past everybody on their horses, like
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Like, hey, yeah, it really does feel like that. Like, especially when I came back to doing my first convention and I saw all my old comic book friends again, a lot of which whom I haven't seen in a while, like Becky Cloonan, for example, I hadn't seen in a
Okay.
long time.
I love that.
And yeah, and so yeah, it was just a great feeling. And even though a lot of people tell me it's cinematic, which is great, I don't have any idea of it being other than a comic. Like if
Mhm.
the other stuff happens, if it gets turned from film or TV show, I mean that's great. That's all gravy. But my main goal is just to make a great comic and make
Right.
the best comic I can. And I'm trying my best to make a comic that'll kind of stand the test of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, something that's not because most of my work before this were kind of very hinged upon the time that it appeared.
Right.
Like there's a lot of references to things that happen during that time because it's set in modern times, most of
Mhm.
them. And I've noticed that with those kind of works, they can kind of go out of. It's very hard for I think newer readers to kind of latch on to certain things you're talking about because that time has passed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they don't stand. They don't seem to be as long lasting. It seems like to me. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but so anyway, so I wanted to do something that was more, hopefully, like more eternal.
Right.
So yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I went to the Last Mermaid. And then the other thing is, I talked about this in the first issue, but I had actually pitched a show with the Last Mermaid, a version of the Last Mermaid inside it as a
Mhm.
character for one particular episode, and I pitched that show around like Disney, everywhere,
Yeah.
Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, but yeah, it didn't take off. And actually, there's a funny story. The show I was going to pitch was called Bobby and the Invisible Express, and it was about a boy on an invisible train. But they had just greenlit Infinity Train,
Oh,
which I wasn't aware.
yeah.
I mean, it literally had just gone into production, and I didn't know about it. And then they were like, "We really like this pitch, Dirk, but we can't have two train
Right.
shows at
Two
the same
train
time."
shows.
Yeah, so that was one of the reasons why I got passed up on from what they told me. Um, but anyway, but that mermaid character really stuck in my mind, and so yeah, I wanted to do a whole story just spun off of her,
Right.
and yeah, that was one of the ways I arrived at the Last Mermaid. And to your point about it being cinematic, I actually started at first as a storyboard just for fun because
Yeah.
I wanted to storyboard something of my own. And then I ended up making it into animatics, which are like storyboards in sequence with music and sound and voices. And I just put that on my Instagram page and my YouTube page just for fun during the pandemic because I didn't have a real job at the time. So I was just taking care of my parents basically. So yeah, I was just doing it just to have something a creative outlet to do. And then, but as we started coming out of the pandemic, I was like, I gotta make a living. I can't just live off likes. So that's when I pitched the story to Image. I'm so sorry about the dinging here.
No, it's not enough.
But yeah, so I pitched it to Image, and luckily because of my time in comics before, I had a lot of connections in comics, so it wasn't hard to get to Eric, to pitch it to Eric. And maybe because I'd been with Image once before, I had a 2-issue series a long time ago in the late 90s. Maybe that's why they were so open to it. But yeah, he just saw the art and the samples that I gave, and then we were off to the races. So I feel really lucky. Yeah.
That's great. That's great to hear. Because one of the questions I was going to ask is getting into talking about the series itself is, I mean, besides the storyboards and ideas that you're working on, were there any kind of outside stories or stories from your past or stories that you enjoy that may have in small ways influenced the story you wanted to tell in The Last Mermaid, or things that you like saw around, or things that you enjoyed that you kind of wanted to kind of bring into this new world?
Oh, for sure. I mean, basically, Last Mermaid is like a soup of everything I love in genre fiction. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, you could probably see it, but like Mad Max is a huge influence. Probably the biggest one. The Road Warrior is probably my favorite. It's hard. I go back between Road Warrior and The Fury Road as like like the best Mad Max. I even like Thunderdome. I think Thunderdome is great too.
I'm gonna be honest, Thunderdome was my favorite one. I
loved. Oh, really?
I love all of them. The Thunderdome was just kind of connected with me, I think, a little bit more, and it wasn't even like Tina Turner's. I think it was. Honestly, I think it was Master Blaster. They just kind of
I love
the character connected with me so much that the film just because like, no, I just have to see that one.
Yeah, Master Blaster is so great. I always joke with my friends that if I ever have a baby, I'll do that cosplay with the baby as Master.
I have 2 kids, and I spent the last 17 years resisting that urge. Just because,
really?
Just because. I think honestly, one, because I wouldn't know how to explain it to my wife, and I could never, and I would never be able to get her to watch the movie to kind of understand where I'm going with it.
Oh, really? Have you tried?
I've tried.
She's
she's a genre fan, but she's not like a post-apocalyptic fan.
Oh, I see. Okay,
yeah, she's just like, I don't need to see the end of anything. So, she's the optimist. So I absolutely give that to her. She's
That's like a great pair.
Yeah, exactly. She's the light at the end of the tunnel person. So I'm like
that's awesome.
So I don't want to take that. But yeah, going back to what you said, so you're talking about like Road Warrior.
But if I can expand on Thunderdome for a second though. Yeah, I think the reason a lot of people don't seem to like it as much as the others is because of the kids section of it. It feels much more not as adult as the other ones, and I think that's why it's not as popular, and probably why I didn't connect to it as much. But all the other stuff I thought was amazing. Yeah, and like you, I totally agree. Like Master Blaster, the Thunderdome itself, and Tina Turner, that whole sequence where they put him on the horse backwards.
Yeah, but I think that's the thing that connect. Oh, I'm sorry, but I think that's the thing that connected me so much to it was because, coming from Road Warrior and how dark and dystopian it was, it was interesting in Thunderdome to see have a whole sequence of the continuation of the darkness that he's in, and then have a little sliver of hope with the kids that things were going, like, even though as bad as it is, things like there's still generations being born. There's still the possibility of
that's true. That's true. Yeah. It's the most hopeful of the four.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like everything else is, like the cover of a metal album, which I'm fine with because that's cool. But I think I like Thunderdome because there's this like little sliver of the little angel that's in the background.
Yeah, I get you. I understand that totally. Yeah, I love Thunderdome as well. Yeah.
But
And
you're talking about,
and plus, from what you said too, like or adding to what you said, I think that's why I put Lottie in my story as well, because
yeah,
the story is so dark and the world is so dark. I wanted at least there's some like an anchor of hope, some happiness, and an axolotl's fixed smile. I think it's automatically makes you happy.
yeah. And again, it's another one of those things that I connected with because the first issue is so suspenseful. I really was like, she's got to find water. She's got to find fresh water. And it was like following that journey. I was like, how? And then like all the mysteries, I was like, how is she going to find fresh water in a desert, in a dystopian desert where everything is destroyed? And then like you just like that I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it, but just that little thing at the end, I was like, okay, all right, you got me, because
that
there's that possibility that I got to see what happens. And then
that thing is like the kids in Thunderdome, the
right, exactly,
little rails.
exactly. I think that's why I was thinking about it, because then that second issue was like, okay, well, she's found this thing, but there's still peril. Like, is she just
Yeah,
stuck here? Is she just stuck in this one place now? And even if she's in this one place, there's still other things that are there. Like, I think one of the things that's been connecting to me a lot with the series is there's so many. It's like without. I think one of the best things about it is that you're not telling us everything that happened. Like, and it's important, but it's not really, because I identify with the character, so I'm following her journey more than I'm trying to figure out what happened to the world around her.
Hmm.
So
That's
that
great to
means,
hear.
yeah. And is that something that that you were going for when you were
Yeah, I,
creating?
I love I love stories where you discover things with the character.
Yeah,
Instead of I really don't like it when there's an info dump in the beginning and there's like
yeah,
I guess Star Wars is a rare exception since it's in the middle of a story, but
right,
when you just have a big scroll that's just telling you about the world,
yeah,
I just think that's a sign of just poor storytelling, in my opinion.
yeah.
And like I said, there are exceptions like Star Wars, but most of the time it's stuff that kind of it's like you're doing homework right before you watch something.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'd much rather like discover the world with the character and through action. Like a perfect example is in Terminator, the first Terminator,
Mm,
where Kyle Reese is telling Sarah Connor about where he came from, about his world,
mhm.
but he does it in the middle of a
And in the
chase.
middle of the movie, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So it's not just an info dump. It's like you're propelled in the story along with the explanation. So that's the same kind of thing. So her being imperial in the beginning, it'll teach you about why she transforms. Right? Is she stuck in the earth? So then she has to transform. So I'm
Mhm.
not just saying, oh, by the way, the Havoc can transform. I'm showing you by her being in
Right.
the situation where she needs it. And same with all the other things. And the way she gets out of that situation in the second issue is also showing you what the things that the Havoc can do, right?
Mhm.
And then her being in hunger, that shows you stuff that she can do with, I don't want
Yeah.
to ruin this stuff in the second
Oh,
issue,
no,
but
no.
she has certain
It's-
abilities that will come in handy later in the story, but that I show you through a situation that's actually happening in the story. So that's I'm just doing things that I love when I read a story, or when I watch a movie, so or read a comic. Yeah.
But again, it goes back to one of the things that I really enjoy about the series. Again, is again it's coming from the point of view of the character. Even though I don't particularly identify with the particular character. There's so many things that I see in that character that I enjoy because of the circumstances around her and what she's in with. Like I enjoy her ingenuity. I enjoy her
Mm,
intelligence. I'm seeing those things not because someone's telling me that she's smart, but
yeah.
that she's, and then you have, then because there's such a big mystery around everything that's happening, is that you have to kind of invest in that character to understand those things. It was like, well, of course she'd have to be smart. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the only way she could survive.
Exactly.
In this,
Exactly.
is that she
Yeah.
would have to be smart. She would have to. She would
It's
like.
like
She
it's
was
like if
walking
you're in a
around
Mad
like,
Max world and you didn't
right,
know how to fix a car. Like,
exactly.
you're dead. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like she's literally living in a walking fishbowl, and
Yeah.
she'd have to know how to repair it if something went wrong. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
one, she's like, because at this point, other than her and like the mystery character, which again is another thing that I love because nothing is revealed and therefore I'm speculating from start to finish. But
Mhm.
between her and the mystery character, there's no one else around. I mean,
Yeah.
and, and her companion, like there's no one else around. So there's so many like I love at the end of a comic when I have a bunch of questions that make
Hmm.
me want to see what happens next. And I know I kind of put that in,
Awesome.
yeah, I put that in reviews a lot, and I think
Hmm.
I'm just kind of, and I have to explain to people, I want to know what happens next. If I'm reading a comic and I want to know what happens next, that's a good comic. That means I'm going to pick up the next issue. Like if I'm reading, if I, yeah, if I'm reading something and at the end of it, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, that was a good story, and I don't feel an urge or a need to see
Mm,
what happens on the other end of this cliffhanger or this arc, then it's a good comic, but it's not necessarily one I'm going to keep following. This is
gotcha.
yeah, Last Mermaid is when I got to see what happens.
Awesome. That's so great to hear, man. I think I'm following the format of those old serials. At the
Yes,
end, you end
yes,
up with some
I'm seeing it.
cliffhanger. Because like so far, every issue ends with a big cliffhanger. Even the third issue ends with the pretty big
Mhm.
cliffhanger. But the fourth one, it gets the major one. We get the first glimpse of what the major premise is, which is what she's doing, why she's risking her life going out. So the fourth issue, I'm hoping will be more of like a introspective cliffhanger, like like
Mhm.
that's why, and we'll definitely find more. Well, in the third and fourth issue, we find a lot. We learn a lot more about the mysterious character. That's when
Right.
he comes in, and I'm really excited for people to
Well,
get a
I'm
handle on
absolutely.
it.
I'm excited to to learn more because going back to what you were saying about the cliffhangers, and one of the things again I I've been enjoying about the cliffhangers at the end of the issues, just talking about like the first one, is that the the little cliffhangers at the end of the first and the second issue are not like huge like battles. It's not like something
Mhm.
jumping out of the dark. It's more things that are being inferred. It's like the first one, they kind of, it's like, oh well, there's this glimmer of hope. And then the
Mhm.
second one is like, oh well, there's this possibility of danger. So it's like
Right, right, right.
things, two things that again is just like, okay, well now I gotta see what happens next. It's just like I'm in the book, it's like I get it. Like what's gonna happen? But
Yeah,
yeah,
one thing I was going to say before was I'm so glad that worked out for you worked for you because I do worry that there isn't enough plot, going on with
mhm,
each series so far, and it will catch up to that. But right in the beginning, because it's such a unseen premise from
yeah,
like, for example, if I do a comic about pirates, I don't have to explain anything about pirates. Everybody already
right,
knows what pirates are, so I can just jump into a story. But with this one, I can't just jump in because I have to explain how a mermaid would get around in this desert wasteland, and how
mhm,
does the havoc work, and how long does the water last inside the machine before you need to refresh it. All
right,
these things I have to explain, and I was like, that's where I had to do this, where you find out all these things with the character going through these perils,
right,
and because of that, I needed these things in the beginning to set it up. But hopefully, I was like, I hope this is interesting enough that people keep going, even though there isn't much plot. That but you're still learning about the character and how it works. So I'm really happy to hear when people say what you just said, because it was a worry of mine, and I know there probably are people that don't like that there isn't that much plot, which I totally get. Everyone's
mhm.
different, but I'm so happy to hear when somebody says something like that. That it's
Well,
working.
that's the thing is that it does have, in my opinion, and then again, I can only go off my opinion, but there's a lot of plot there uh in what's being teased to the reader and what the reader and the questions the reader has.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm yeah,
So,
because like those first two issues, I'm asking a lot of questions, and that's kind of creating the plot in my mind beyond what I'm seeing. And
awesome.
then I get the option of when things aren't the way I envision them to go, oh, okay, well, then I gotta go back and see like, well, how did I get this wrong? Or what the, how did like was there something that I inferred that was mistaken, or oh, that was kind of spot on to what I thought was gonna happen. So
Right, right.
I again, that's one of the reasons why I love mysteries. I love stories, stories like the one that you're telling, is because you don't have to tell me everything. You don't have
Yeah.
to
Yep.
reveal everything at once. I don't need. There are times when I need an exposition dump when I'm jumping in the middle of a world that already exists. Then you can kind of take the time and kind of tell me why this person hates this person or why this person needs to do this thing. But I think the first two
Hmm.
issues you've laid out
Yeah.
really well, kind of in small form, because I know that there are bigger things at stake, but in small form you've laid out like the stakes for this character, and because they're so uh it for this character itself, like I find myself more invested because
I'm so
it's
sorry.
oh no problem, it's about her, and that's what I'm looking at
Hmm.
that's what I'm looking through the lens of, like her journey.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, I love, my favorite kind of stories is where you're following that character and seeing the world through their eyes,
right,
you know? Yeah. I mean, Lord of the Rings is another classic example. Those hobbits have never left Hobbiton. You know what I
exactly,
mean? So yeah, when you see the world, it's like you're discovering it with the hobbits, you know?
right,
And same sort of kind of storytelling I'm trying to do with The Last Mermaid, for
yeah.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
So I
But I'm
mean,
so glad, yeah, that it's working for you. So the story,
well, I was
because
saying, man,
I have heard complaints from some people, like more, I guess more traditional comic readers, that like they really hate the slow pace and the fact that I'm spending a lot of like pages for individual moments. Uh, instead of every panel being like another scene, but
right,
I'm only doing it because I think it's good storytelling, and
yeah,
it's an important moment, and I want to luxuriate in that moment, and really, uh, I don't want to skim over a part where you think, if there's a moment like in the end of the first issue where you think she's gonna die, I don't want to make that a short scene.
right,
Like I
yeah.
really want to show her pain and show what she's going through. And I think you can only do that with multiple pages, at least for me, and
But,
manga.
but do you find that easier to do when you're both the writer and the artist on a project? Like you're one of those things where, because I love the collaborative process of comics and talking to writers and
Mm-hmm.
artists and how they collaborate on certain scenes. But do you find it's kind of easier to kind of make sure that you're conveying the emotion in the moment that you want to when you kind of do one man banding it? Like, do you find that
Yeah,
easier?
it's actually both are great in different ways.
Yeah,
Um, it's really interesting. Like, for example, if you're doing it all yourself, of course, there's nobody to fight with or have any difference of opinion with, right, or perspective
right.
with. So it's very um, it's easy in terms of like being able to do exactly what's in your mind instead of trying to get somebody to interpret what's in your mind. But the plus side with an artist, especially with a great one, they'll bring things that you didn't even think of. And
Yeah,
this is something I really learned in animation, where you work with a team of like, dozens of people. Everyone's bringing in their own ideas, and the best ideas rise, to the top. And there's so many times, like I'm working on this book called Royals, my next graphic novel for Image, which comes out next year. There's an artist named Jacob Perez, and he's an artist on the new Ninja Turtles show, Tales of the Ninja Turtles,
oh,
and he's an incredible artist, and he's bringing so much to the story that I hadn't thought of. In fact, one of the most pivotal things at the very end, I actually didn't really catch until he told it to me. I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, why? So if I hadn't worked with Jacob, I might have never even caught that. And that one takes place in modern times, and there's stuff with like cars and like action with like modern things that I just can't do as well as Jacob.
yeah,
Jacob can draw like car flipping or like a motorcycle sliding or stuff like that I don't think I could really do justice to as much as him.
right.
And like those kind of scenes, I just let Jacob do whatever he wants to do, as long as it's going, as long as the story's being told. And so in that sense, it's easier if I have an artist doing things that I normally can't do that well, and
Hmm.
somebody that can make things better than what's in my mind. I can, when I'm alone, I can only do what's in my mind. I can't do better than what's in my mind. But if you're with somebody else, they might actually be doing something better than you. So
Right.
yeah, it's a great, like, both things are great. I love doing stuff on my own, but I also love collaborating. So especially the artists like Jacob Perez,
Yeah.
which people don't know his art, check out his Instagram. Just look up his name. He's an amazing artist, and I can't wait for people to see that book when it comes out.
Okay. Well, I'm again just going back to the Last Mermaid, and because there's so many questions I want to ask you, but I don't want to spoil it for myself because again,
Yeah, of course.
I'm really just kind of immersed in the story, and I love like the things that you said about the upcoming two issues, and none of them were spoilery, but they both made me excited. But I wanted to ask is like, is this a story that you think works better with just like the small amount of characters, or do you have plans to kind of expand the world a little bit? Is
Oh
this
yes, this is
okay?
just the tip of the iceberg. So the story will probably run about 25 to 30 issues, as long as the sales hold and I can get there.
Right,
And yeah, it's I keep using Lord of the Rings as an example, but it's another perfect example where it starts small and then slowly it gets
right,
bigger and bigger as it goes. And it's not quite that big, but it definitely we're going to the climax with Islas. I mean, with the mermaid and Lottie, and so now it feels very like a small cast, but it's gonna grow, like it's gonna snowball, is what I'm trying to
right,
say. Yeah, it's gonna snowball as it goes, and what this first season is this first 6 issues, and then I have to take a break to stock up on more pages, and then the second season there's gonna be a lot of characters. There's a lot of characters. A lot of craziness. Obviously, I don't want to say anything, but yeah, I can't wait to get to the second season, because that's when the story really gets to full gear. Yeah, all the setup will be done. All the premise setting will be all done, and it'll get into like the second act, full throttle. And yeah, I can't wait. But before we get there, I'm really excited for people to see the next few issues, because yeah, it really, really sets the stage. And you'll probably, like you said, how you're like saying like these hints I'm putting in is putting all these stories in your mind. I think
mhm.
it'll put a lot of stories in your mind, and I'm curious to see if the story that I'm telling will match that, or surprise people, or make people mad. I don't know. So I'm really excited.
I'll be honest with you, the best stories kind of do all three. Like there'll be things that
Okay,
it's
that's
like
true. Yeah, yeah.
there'll be the things that I expect that'll be like, okay, well, okay, he got there. He got to where where I thought he was gonna go. Then there'll be the things that surprise you. Say, oh, I wasn't expecting that. And then there'll be the things where you're just like, no, what? Okay, well now I got to see how does he fix this? Like how does this work? Like how does
Right,
this
right.
work with this? But yeah, so
I'm really, I'm really hoping I hit all three. Yeah, when you read, I can't wait to. Let's do this again when like the
oh,
first 6 issues come out. Then wait, when I have more time, then we can talk longer. Yeah.
absolutely. I would absolutely
Okay.
love to do this at the end of the arc and just
Yeah.
because then I can just kind of dump
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
dump on you
we'll
and
we'll
just
give a spoiler warning and just go crazy. Just go
right
ham.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but Derek Kirk Kim, again, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. Were there any other projects or things that you wanted to talk about that you're excited about beyond The Last Mermaid?
Yeah, so the one, it's called Royals, the one I'm doing with Jacob Perez, and that one comes out in April of next year. And Jacob is knee deep drawing it right now. It's 212-page self-contained graphic novel,
Okay.
and it's a crime noir caper kind of story, and it's sort of like if you've ever wanted to see a mashup of Baby Driver, Jackie Chan films, and Rounders, the poker movie,
Okay.
I think you'll enjoy this. Enjoy the story. It's about two twin brothers who are telepathically linked, and they use this power to con poker games. And in this story, they get caught,
That's
and they don't realize that the game has actually been put on by this underground mob in Korea, in Seoul, South Korea. It takes place in Korea, and then the poop hits the fan, and the story goes from there. And yeah, really excited about it, and I hope people check that one out too. But Last Mermaid #3 comes out next month, and then for the following 3 months, it'll be monthly until issue 6, and then I'll have a little break, and then I'll come back with issue 7, hopefully in like half a year, maybe. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Awesome. And if you wanted people to follow you on social media, where would they be able to find you?
So I'm only on Instagram and Threads, so easy to remember. Just my name, at Derek Kirk Kim, all one word, and that's it. Yeah, I'm on both, and yeah, it'd be awesome if people wanted to follow me.
Well, Derek Kirk Kim, thank you again so much for being on the Fancast, and I will absolutely reach out to you at the end of this chapter,
Awesome.
and just so we can deep dive on what's on.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I would love that. And thank you again for having me, and thank you for the reviews. They're so nice. They're so kind. It really made my day to read those reviews.
They're easy to do because it's a great story. It's a great story I'm reading. Like, I mean,
thanks, man.
It's the easiest thing I can do is talk about something that I'm enjoying.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
No problem at all. Okay, once again, I want to thank Derek Kirk Kim for being on the podcast. Check out The Last Mermaid issues 1 and 2 now before the 3rd issue arrives this month. You can follow the Fancast at Superpowered Fan on X, Superpowered Fancast on Instagram, our Facebook group, Superpowered Fancast, and get all the latest news and reviews on the website, www.superpoweredfancast.com.